Okay, so back in early July this year, that's 2023, I uploaded a setup guide for a front-end launcher system called Playnite. So for those of you who's not heard of Playnite, it's essentially a totally free version of Launchbox. And you can check out the video which I did on this back in July. I'll link that in my description, as well as linking the website to download Playnite for yourselves in my description. But more specifically, it's briefly setting up Playnite again for this setup guide. I'm focusing on PCSX2 in how to add this amazing PS2 emulator to Playnite, and I'm then going to show you how to configure each game with its own specific video settings rather than just using PCSX2 generalizing video settings. So anyway, if you're curious about this front-end launcher system and PCSX2, feel free to watch this video and check this out. Okay, so first things first, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to hit notifications and subscribe, and also remember to like. It gets you the latest up-to-date retro emulation video content that I upload on my channel daily, and I mainly cover RetroBat, Launchbox, RetroArch, Batacera, Raspberry Pi. So anyway, let's get on with this. So what we're looking at today is Playnite. And firstly, we're going to need to download Playnite. So link is in my description, like I say, and what we're going to do is just scroll down and find the downloads tab. Let's just download Playnite. And once this one has been downloaded, what I suggest you doing is creating a folder somewhere on your computer. I'm going to do this on my desktop, so I'm going to right click, new folder, and I'm going to just call this one Playnite. And the reason for this is that all the files for Playnite are going to be easier to access rather than going deep into our hard drive. So what we're going to do then is open up Playnite, and we're going to install that to the computer. So once we created our folder, we've also got the Playnite installer.exe. Let's open this up and let's get this installed. So we're going to go to options, and destination folder by default is, like I just said, it's going to go deep into our hard drive, which is app data local Playnite. I don't want this. You can actually make this easier to access should you need it. So that's why I've just created this folder on my desktop. So let's go to browse and desktop. And here's my Playnite folder that I've just created. So I'm going to install it to here, press OK, and simply press on install. Okay, so that's Playnite installed. And what I'm going to do right now is just close this down. And we can also delete this install.exe. We no longer need this one, so just right click on that and delete it. Okie dokes. So the next part of this process is we're going to need the PCSX2 emulator. Like I say, Playnite is much like Launchbox, where we kind of got to import our own emulators to make this work. So link's going to be in my description for this emulator, and this is PCSX2. So what I'm going to do is just click on the latest stable version of this, and I'm going to go to the 32-bit portable version. The 32-bit in store is pretty much the same, although in store is going to install to your hard drive, whereas portable we can place in a folder on our desktop for easy access. So I'm going to go for portable for this, and just wait for this one to download. So once we downloaded the emulator, you're likely going to download a zip file. In my case, I'm using WinRAR, so I've got this in WinRAR format. You might be using 7-zip or WinZip. What I'm going to do is just double left click on this, and inside we have got a folder PCSX2, and this is currently 1.6.0 as recording this video. So I'm going to just left click on this and drag it out onto my desktop. And we can close this one down now, and we can also delete this zipped archive. So just delete that one. Now, first thing we need to do is set up PCSX2, and this really isn't that difficult to do. So what we're going to do is just go inside of this folder, and we're going to go into the PCSX2.exe. And this is going to open up the initial setup guides for this emulator. So what we're going to do first is just go to next. And we're going to go to next again. Now, the next part PCSX2 is going to ask you for is BIOS files. Now, if you do a quick search online, you can find out which BIOS files PCSX2 works with. So once you've got your BIOS files, what we're going to do is just go to the Use Default setting and uncheck this one. And from Browse, you can then locate your PCSX2 BIOS files. So once you found this, just select them. Once you found a place of your PS2 or PCSX2 BIOS files, just go to refresh list. Okay, so we've got our BIOS files now put into this list. So what I'm going to do is from here, just press finish. And this is then going to open up the PCSX2 emulator. So we got a little terminal just here, which actually tells us what's going on in the PCSX2 emulator. It's also going to list your hardware specifications, as you can see here from mine. So once we've done all of this, what we're going to do next is look at adding a game. So PCSX2, it supports a couple of different file extensions. I've got one in .iso file extension, and that works fine. So as we can see on my desktop, I've got 007, everything or nothing. So just to make this easier, I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop, new folder, and I'm going to just call this PS2 Games. And what I'm going to do first is just load up this game just to test this is working. Now, we got two options on PCSX2. If we go to System, you can have the full ISO, which means we're going to see the BIOS screen before the game kicks in with that PS2 logo. Or if we just go to Boot ISO Fast, that will take us directly into the game. So let's go to Boot Fast, and I'm going to locate my game, and it's on my desktop. And my game is in my PS2 games folder that I've created. I'm going to just highlight my game and press yes. Okay, so we can see it's booted up fine. And what we're going to do next is actually configure some video settings for this. As we see, this one booted into a small window, but we want this to boot up with a full screen once we import this into Playnite. So what I'm going to do is go to the config tab in PCSX2. If I go down to video, if I go to plugin settings, now, internal resolution, this is the part where you can really make your PSX2 games look really amazing. So under internal resolution, we could bump this up to 5K. I wouldn't recommend this. Very few PS2 games do run in perfect 5K. So I'm going to just put this one up to 1080p. And let's just remind ourselves that native resolution of PS2 games was what, around 480p, 480i. So even by upscaling this to 1080p, it's a massive, vast improvement. So anastrophic filtering, if you go to higher settings on this one, such as 16 or 8 times, it might cause lag on your games if you're running a lower end system. So just be cautious of which one you're choosing on anastrophic filtering. I'm going to just go to 4 times. And finally, at the top, we got render. Now, by default, this one's going to be using OpenGL hardware. I'm going to change mine over to Direct 3D 11 hardware. And under the adapter, I'm going to choose my graphics cards, which is RTX 3050. And just press OK. And the next part of this we're going to need to do to make games look better and get the configuration files for this particular game is just go back to config. If we go down to emulation settings, under GS window, we got aspect ratio. So of course, most, if not 99% of PS2 games would have been running with a standard 4:3 ratio, but you can change this to widescreen 16:9 if you wish. I'm going to try this one. And what I was saying just a minute ago with our game being displayed on a tiny little window, we need to open this up on Playnite with a full screen. So there's an option here, default to full screen mode on open. and I'm going to just check this one. And that's a real basic video setup guide for PCSX2. They're your main ones, and some people chooses to toggle around with this at the bottom. I just dropped mine onto balanced. So I'm going to press apply, okay, and I'm going to just boot up my game again just to see these video settings are going to be working okay with the game. So system, and just go down to boot ISO fast. Just press escape to exit that game. As we can see, that's working perfectly. One last thing, whilst we're in the PCSX2 emulator, we need to configure controllers too. So on some occasions, you might need to do this. So we're going to just go to config, controllers, plugin settings, and from here, you can then configure your controller. So for example, I'm going to be going to pad 1 and quick setup, and please enter input for select. So if we look here on the left-hand column, we can see PS2 up, and this one's going to be asking for that. So up, and select is asking for next, and L3, start, and so on. All you're going to do next is just go to apply and OK, and that's your controller now set up and ready to go. So we've now got the PCSX2 emulator set up as well as customized video settings for our game. So what I'm going to do next is actually open up Playnite. So once we're inside of Playnite, what we're going to do is just head over to this little orange and yellow joypad just there, or a controller. Just left click on this one. And what we're going to do next is go down to the library. And then we're going to go to configure emulators. So just click on this one. And right at the bottom here, we see add. So just press on the add, and we're then going to name the emulator. So I'm going to just type in PCSX2. Now it's asking us for the installation folder of PCSX2. So as we know, this is on my desktop. So if we just go over to the right and click on the folder, go to desktop, and here it is. So we need to point this to where the PCSX2 emulator is located, like I've just done. And we're going to press select folder. So that's set. Next up, we're going to just go down one to emulator specification. Just drop this down and scroll right down until we come across PCSX2. And here it is. So just select this one. And under profiles, we got another add button. Just left click on add. And I'm going to go to built-in profile default 32-bit. Under general, what we're going to do is name this again. So rather than default 32-bit, we're going to delete this and just type in PCSX2 once again. And that's that part done. So once we press save, PCSX2 is now linked up with Playnite. So we're going to add our games now, or rather import them into Playnite. So just go back up to this controller again and go to add game, emulate as game, and we're going to go to add scanner. Now, under scan with emulator, if you drop this down, you should now see PCSX2, and the same for profile, PCSX2. And we need to scan the folder for our games. So to do this, we're going to open up the folder, and we're going to point this to where our games are. So in my case, it's in my PS2 games folder on my desktop. Select folder, start scan. And we should now see our game, or if you've got several games in that PS2 folder or wherever they are on your computer, you're going to see the name of the game, the region of it, and also the platform, which is obviously PS2. So we're going to go to import. And here we go. So we can now see our game. And here's the game. So we got a little bit of brief information about this game. So what I'm going to do next is just highlight on where this little pencil is, left click on that one. And we're going to put some media in here, say artwork. So if I just go over to media, I'm going to go to download metadata, IGDB, and we're going to click on search. And you won't then have a selection of different games. You need to select the game that is relevant to the game that you've imported. So, for example, I'm going to just go for this top one, just here from 2004. And I'm going to highlight that and just press on select. And press select again. And here's our cover art for the game. So once you downloaded your cover art, we're just going to go to save. And as we can see, we now got our cover art for that game. Okie doke, so let's boot up our game and actually see if this works. We put all this work into this. Let's go ahead and just go to play. And as we can see, that's working and booting just fine. I won't bore you with my gameplay on that one. And whilst we're on Playnite, let me just remind you that we can actually make this into a full screen. So if we go down to switch to full screen mode, here we go. So it looks a lot better like this. And of course, this is going to look awesome once you start adding your collection to Playnite. As you can see, I've just got one game for this. And to exit full screen, I'm going to just press F11 on my keyboard, and that's going to take us back into the windowed mode. Right, so for the final part of this setup guide, if you remember at the start of the video, I created a folder, and I created a folder called Everything or Nothing, and I put in a load of .ini files from PCSX2 for my video settings. So this part is going to be important if you've got many games and you want specific video configuration settings for each game you've got. So what we're going to do is very simple on this. We're just going to highlight on the game that you've got in your library on Playnite. And again, if we just go down to this little pencil icon, just left click on this one, and we're going to go to actions this time. Now under emulator here, this one needs to be on PCSX2. And under profile, just make sure this one is also on PCSX2. And I'm also going to check override emulator arguments. And under emulator arguments, so I'm going to just edit this emulator arguments and I'm going to add another argument with this. So this is now going to be space, two minuses, followed with CFG path, and then equals inis / and I'm now going to type in the name of my folder, which is everything or nothing, and I'm going to hit save. And this has now generated a specific video for each game that you've got. And obviously for every game you've got, if you want a specific video setup, this is how you do it. So that's it for my Playnite setup guide with PCSX2 and customized video settings for your games. So like I said at the start of the video, if you like what you see, just hit notifications, subscribe and like. And be sure to check out my other front-end system setup guides. Like I said at the introduction to this video, I cover RetroBat, which is a very awesome front-end system. I also cover Launchbox, RetroArch, and lots of standalone emulators for consoles and microcomputers of the 80s and 90s. Also, be sure to check out my membership options. If there's a specific video you want me to do for you, hit on the next level tier, and one of the perks for that tier is where I can create you a specific setup guide for anything emulation related. Also, be sure to check me out on social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. But like I always say, stay retro.